RT's Rory Suchet is in our G20 studio in St. Petersburg for us with all the very latest updates on what's been happening at the summit. Rory, good evening to you. So do tell us what's been happening. It's been a very busy day today.
Yeah, Marina, absolutely. Day two of the G20 has been absolutely slam-packed with action. Let's get down to it here for the report on RT, our live coverage here at the G20. We've heard from both the American President Barack Obama, his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Both have taken the main stage at the G20, both giving fairly large speeches, but perhaps more interestingly, that of the Q&A, the question and answer session with members of the press shortly after that as well. When it comes to the issue of Syria, yes, it did take center stage currently at the G20 summit. A lot of world leaders, they want to talk about economics and this, that and the other, but when it comes down to it, Syria has been overshadowing the main issues here. One of the repercussions that would occur, according to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, if a strike were to happen against Syria, he says that, well, one thing would be, of course, it would cause further regional instability, but it would cause a spike in global oil prices, meaning that the world economy will start to stutter and falter because of an outside intervention in Syria. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, also saying it's the Saudis, the Qataris and the UK who are very much wanting an outside intervention strike against Syria, hopefully by them, led by that of Washington, D.C. And when it comes to all the allegations of the chemical weapons attacks, of course, Washington's been saying it's the Assad government who did the chemical weapons from day one. However, that's in stark contrast to that of the Russian president. Vladimir Putin says it was the rebels who did the chemical attack as an act of provocation. Here's what Vladimir Putin had to say.
I've mentioned before that I view everything that happened with the so-called use of chemical weapons in Syria as the provocation by the rebels who count on help from abroad, from those countries that originally supported them. That's the reason for this provocation. I also want to remind you that the use of force against a sovereign state is acceptable only if it's done for self-defense, and we know that Syria hasn't attacked the US, and only if the UN Security Council approves such action. As one of the participants of our discussions on the issue put it yesterday, those who do otherwise put themselves above the law.
Now, also, one of the other questions Vladimir Putin had to answer at this press conference here at the G20 summit was if indeed an external intervention, a strike does take place on Syria, what kind of regional and global implications and repercussions could come from it. Here's what Vladimir Putin had to say on that.
Small countries in the modern world feel increasingly vulnerable and unprotected. It seems that bigger and more powerful states can attack them at any time. To ensure non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, we need to guarantee impeccable implementation of international law.
Now, of course, after the Russian president, the next in line was the American President Barack Obama. He took the stage as well, although he didn't speak for nearly as long as the Russian president. And frankly, his speech seemed to be fairly segmented. A lot of gaping pauses in what he had to say. Mr. Obama saying that he did have a 30-minute talk with Vladimir Putin, that it was sincere and it was constructive. Barack Obama also saying that when it comes to Syria, the world has a duty and an obligation to react to these so-called chemical weapons attacks. Though he did say, Barack Obama saying that I became president to stop wars and not to start them. Also, this just in here at the G20, the French President Francois Hollande, he's now saying that France does have enough evidence to prove that the Assad regime did use chemical weapons, but despite Francois Hollande's major saber rattling, he's been saying that only the the UN Security Council has the right to take up measures in such cases. He's also saying, Francois Hollande, that he will decide what France's role in Syria will be after the US Congress makes its vote. Now, that of the UN mediator to Syria is Lakhdar Brahimi. He had lunch with Russia's foreign minister today, Sergei Lavrov. Lakhdar Brahimi coming out to say regarding Syria, no country can strike another sovereign nation without clearance from the United Nations. Here's what he had to say.
We've been asked from time to time, what about the use of force by members of the international community? And there, we don't, I think the Secretary General or myself, we don't express personal opinion. We say what international law says. And international law says that no country is allowed to take the law into their hands. They have to go through the Security Council.
Now, just a bit earlier in the programme here on RT, I spoke to Mario Franson. He says that Obama's plans to strike at Syria are not actually about anything to do with the use of chemical weapons. Rather, it's all about changing the balance of power in the favour of the rebels.
What we see clearly is that President Obama speaking about world opinion, etc., the G20 summit showed that this is not the truth. He has a minority position, and then I don't only speak about Western countries, but worldwide. It's clearly that his position and his willingness to attack Syria on this issue is a minority position, and that's also why he is trying to find an alliance which is going around the United Nations Security Council. So the reasons why the US is going after war, it's something that we have to look back to for more than 2 years. Many people say that now we have to do something because of these chemical weapons used, but don't forget that the United States with its allies is involved already for 2 years. And so destabilizing Syria and really going after regime change has been the agenda from the beginning. And I think now extra push could be given in favor of the rebels fighting on the ground and attacking Syria at this moment. But there you go, you can never underestimate the United States, so it's hard to guess what they really have on their agenda now.
Now, there's still a lot more to come here from the G20 summit in St. Petersburg. I'm Rory Souchet, live on RT. Many more reports and analysis and experts to discuss basically the final day now of the G20 summit.